So in this video, we are going to see how we can implement create operation using unmanaged scenario. In our last video, we have seen how to implement the early numbering, what that early numbering is. If we run the application which we have created, click on the create button here. You see here a ID has been generated. So this ID generation we have implemented using early numbering. Now in this video, we will be saving this data, whatever we are going to put on the front end, pushing this data to persistent state. So let's start. So very first thing which we need to do here is, let's see our code, and the only file which currently we are working on is our API class, our main class, the behavior implementation class which we have created. Okay, so what we are going to do here is, in our last video we have seen early numbering, and that was a part of interaction phase. The method which was available, this early numbering create, this is the method which got created by the framework, and this is not a part of save sequence because the data is not yet been saved into the database, or we haven't saved this data into the database. This is a part of interaction phase. So whatever user is doing onto the screen, if they are updating the values, putting all the values and all those things. So before saving, if we are doing anything at a high level, if you want to understand, that's called the interaction phase. And when we are actually pushing the data to the backend system or your database table, all those kind of operations are done in the save sequence. And all of these things in detail we have already seen previous videos. Now in this video we will be using two different methods for creating a record. The very first method will be create, which when you click on the create button onto the front end application, then this method gets triggered. Now we also have a implementation for this method. Here is the implementation available. And the second method which we are going to use here is actual save sequence method. Our save sequence method is this one. So this is the class LSC, which stands for save sequence. And these are all the methods which are available in unmanaged scenario. In this video specifically, we will be seeing this save method, which will be responsible to commit the data into database. We will also see these methods, when we can use this and how to use this method, but not in this video, but maybe in coming videos. What we have done for early numbering method, let's do the same thing for create method as well. What we have done is, very first thing, we checked all the parameters what this create method will accept or return. So for that, click on the method name and press on F2. Here you got the full definition for this create method. And since we are having an API class, we will be copying this method and creating our own, and then the actual method which we will be creating in API, we will be calling into this implementation class. That's what we have done for early numbering as well. Let's start. Paste it here. Put the dot and delete all of these unnecessary comments which are not needed. So importing entities, let's move it a little bit here. Then changing mapped, failed and reported. Let's name it create student, and let's start changing the name. So we have table for create, and this Most probably we already have this table type created. So let's use the same one, table for create here. Then type response for mapped early also we have here. So use the same data type here again. Response for failed early. So failed early also we have already. Type response for reported early. So this reported early also we have. So our method is now ready. Now let's do the implementation of this method. Our implementation is now created, and now it's time to write some code here to save the data coming from front end to the back end or sending it to persistent state. Let's activate it. Our class got activated. Before starting on this method, I just want to update you some of the small changes or cleanup which I did. Those are not captured in any video. But if you remember, we have used this line of code to generate the GUID for student. I just made another method, getNextID, and the same line of code is there in this method. Another field which we need to update is student ID field. So for that as well, I created a method, this getNextStudentID. What this method does is it reads this table and gets the maximum number of count, and then whatever the ID, max ID is there, we just add +1 and generate a new ID. But here we will be using that method. So these are the two methods which I created, getNextID and getNextStudentID. Let's write the code here. So very first thing which we are going to do here is we will get whatever is coming from the front end. That's what we always do, and in most of the cases. Now same way we have done here. In this method, the importing check F2 and importing is entities. So it means from the front end we are getting entities. Whatever user is inputting in the fields, everything will be available here. So let's add it to our global table, and our global table name is GT student. Let's do that. So GT underscore student is equal to, we need whatever is coming from the front end and mapping from entity. So whatever is in the entity, everything will move based on the available column to this global table or the buffer table. One thing is done. Now the next thing is, since we are creating a record, let's run through this entity and find out what are all the things available in this entity. So assigning field symbol, LFS underscore entities and loop. Now what we will do here is we will first update the ID field, because it's not auto generate. The ID field, student ID field. So there are two ID fields we are having. One is student ID and one is single ID field. So single ID field we have generated through early numbering because it was auto generate. It was a key field. But the student ID field is not an auto generate field. That's why to put the value in that field, we need to write the code, and that's what we haven't done in the early numbering. Yeah, because it was not needed. But since we are creating, so whatever fields which are not auto generate, we need to pass the values. So we have everything here. Now what we need to do is we need to update this GT student. and student ID is equal to get next student ID. Okay, this is done. So this will fill our student ID. Let's put a check here to on the safer side. If not, this is initial. If this is not initial. Now this is done. The next thing which we need to do is just a mapping of student entity. So where we need to map all of the things mapped in the student entity. How we are going to map, what values? We have already seen this thing in our previous video. This is a table, so 2 brackets dot this is a best practice which is needed. So %CID is equal to our entities %CID, then %key and %key is also there, and %is draft and draft. This is done. So our create student method is now completed. The next thing which we need to do is, since we have got all of our front end data in this, so let's use this buffer table in the save method. Let's activate this and go to our class. Now go to our save sequence methods. We have the save sequence F2 and copy. Okay, this is done. Now create this one. TT reported late. So TT reported early we need to create TT reported late and type. This is done. Now let's implement the save data method. Now in the save data, just grab this table. This save data is basically a commit. If you are using any RFC or any function module or anything, those should go here, the final one, which has the logic to save the data. Now what we are going to do here is, we will just write if not this is initial. We are getting something in this. In that case, we will use modify and z students. Okay, what's our table name here? Database table z students ts_um from table, and that's it. Our API method is now ready. Let's activate it. It got activated. Now the only pending stuff is calling these methods. So we have created create student and save data. So let's go to our implementation class and go to our create method. Now let's copy this and create student. again pass everything here. And report it. This is done. The second method is in the save sequence. Save sequence, save method, and this one. Paste, and we have got save data. Click on activate. Now our implementation class got active. Now let's run the application and see if it works. So our application is getting loaded properly. Click on go. Okay, so this one was created when we started this video. So let's not look at this. This is all blank. Click on create button. We got our ID created here. Now let's provide the details. First name, last name, put some age, computers, duration is 5. Let's make the status as active. And let's put the date. We are also seeing our draft is getting updated properly here, if you see. Now click on the create button. Yeah, see our record got created here and we got a new ID generated since this is the first record which is in the persistent state. The one which we have seen was in the draft state. It was not a persistent data. So our student ID is generated, first name, last name, all of these fields are getting displayed here correctly. Now let's go back and see we got our record here as well. When you click this, you will see the record available. Let's do one thing. When we were creating this method, we have used a loop here, and then what we are doing, we are passing this entry here in the mapped student. This is kind of old style. Let's do it in a new way, which is always good to learn. Very first thing which we will do here is let's comment out this code. Add comments. This code is now commented. Now let's write in a different way, in a newer way. How we can write this? Very first thing which will be there is these two lines will still be needed. We are checking if this is not blank. We anyway need to update this field. So this is done. Now the next thing is we need to update this student entity in the mapped table. How we can do that? Let's write the new syntax. Mapped is equal to value, and then where we need to put the values, let's put a dot here. Where we need to put the values, we need to put in students entity. Students entity is also need to be filled with values. So this is also done. Now what value should go into student entity? Which values we were passing? We were passing whatever coming from the front end entities, right? That's what we were passing here. So now we will put a loop here. So for ls entity in all the entities which are coming, and what we need to update? We still need to update CID. Let's copy these three fields and remove the comments. Okay, Now all of these things will be coming from ls entity, and ls entity. So this is another way, the better way to write this specific code using a new syntax. So whatever code was doing this, we have reduced the number of lines as well, and we are using a new syntax. So let's activate now and let's see if this works. Refresh, click on go. We still have 2 records. Click on create button. We got our new ID here. Let's give another name. Subject is change, 3 years, student active, and we are getting draft updated. Now click on create. See, our record got created here, and if we go back, we got 2 different records. Wait, but this student ID is not getting increased. Let's see what's going on here. Why it is not getting increased? So mapped get next student ID mapped. Okay, so I just saw we have used incorrect table, and this table might not have any values. That's why it is not increasing. So let's activate now. Activated, and let's create another record here. Refresh once. Now the student ID should go up by 1 here. Let's create. Computers, course duration 5. Gender and the date. So student ID is blank. Click on create. See, now it is updated. Go back. Now the student ID is also getting updated here. Okay, so that's all for now in this video, and if you like the content, please consider subscribing to my channel. Thank you.